So many stories, so many themes, so many threads. Here we are sitting at the Sunday Feast program, and I remember once being in New York when the temple was in Brooklyn on Henry Street. I think there are quite a few devotees from the New York, New Jersey area here, right? And so the temple was about this size, but maybe a little bit longer. And Srila Prabhupada came in for the program. I was the pujari at that time, and I was standing on the altar on the left-hand side behind what was a curtain, and kind of hiding there. Prabhupada was coming in. I had just finished the arti. Prabhupada would come up to the front and offer his obeisance, look at the deities with devotion, with his hands folded, and then bow down to the deities and then go back. His Vyasasan was like this temple, his Vyasasan was in the back, and he would go back and sit on his Vyasasan and sing Jai Radha Madhava. So on this one particular occasion, the deities were beautifully dressed in, just as they are tonight, but not with chandan, but that night Krishna was wearing a yellow dhoti and Radharani was wearing a sari, very simple Vrindavan style. And Srila Prabhupada was looking at them with great devotion. And when he started to bow down to the deities, Prabhupada was sort of right in the middle, right there, and I was to the left. And so as he started to bow down to the deities, tears just shot out of his eyes, just like syringes. Across the people on the other side of the temple room became splashed with his tears. And the people were looking around. They thought that the pujari had thrown the water from the arti. Mm-hmm. And I jumped down from the altar and told one of my friends, and we were just taking Prabhupada's tears off the floor and putting them on our heads. I told her these are Prabhupada's tears. Mm-hmm. So then, but Prabhupada never made a show of these kinds of things. His lessons about devotional ecstasy were utilizing every moment, working with great determination for the spiritual master, not about making a show. But sometimes these feelings overwhelmed him. And so then he just very simply walked back to the Vyasasan and sang Jai Radha Madhava. It's beautiful. Just thinking of New York and early days of Krishna consciousness. There's so many youth here, and I was thinking of this one story that's kind of funny. That Srila Prabhupada, I had come to Krishna consciousness in San Francisco, and then I came to serve in Boston on the East Coast, and we were in New York, and I was not living at that temple, but it was when the temple was at 26 Second Avenue, and there were young devotees there that were my age. They were about 16, and this sounds kind of unbelievable today, but when Prabhupada would come into the temple room, these young devotees would kind of scream, like stories of Elvis or the Beatles. That's what they would do. Prabhupada would come in and they would go, "Ah, Swamiji, Swamiji!" And I have to admit, I found it kind of embarrassing. I was the same age that they were, but anyway, they used to screech and scream like that. And so Prabhupada always knew the perfect solution for everything, and he took them into his quarters and he said, and this is a special story for all the youth who are here today. He said, told them, "You are the children of the society, and you must be very grave." So that was a nice lesson. And around that same time, 26 Second Avenue, he used to have programs Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights, and then on alternate nights he would speak in his quarters, which were he had an apartment behind the little storefront temple, so there was a small apartment for him behind that storefront. And one evening he was looking at each and every one of us, looking into our eyes, one to the next, and As I said, I was about 16 years old at the time, and he said, I want each one of you to open a temple, looking from one to the next to the next. And being, practically speaking, a child, I'm still very impetuous, but at the time I was even much more impetuous. And I said, even the girls, Swamiji? And he was laughing, and he said, yes, when you are preaching Krishna consciousness, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. And then he began to explain how Janava Devi, the wife of Lord Nityananda, had been the leader of the Sankirtan mission at one time. So how there is no difference when one is engaged in serving, preaching Krishna consciousness between the boys and the girls. Very nice. I was writing notes with my left hand. I'm left-handed, and Prabhupada was speaking, and then he stopped speaking and he was just watching me. And I looked up, and he said, you write like Gargamuni, backwards and topsy-turvy. And then he said, yes, once in India, I saw a man. He was playing mridanga with his knees, harmonium with his toes, tabla with his, he went on and on. And yes, I have seen this. And this was quite a feat, writing with the left hand. Devotees, who was one of the artists from the BBT who had painted for the books that Prabhupada was writing. He was sitting next to a bookshelf, and he pulled a copy of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya off the shelf. He was just sort of holding it in his lap. And then he asked Prabhupada his burning question. He said, Prabhupada, when we see pictures of Lord Chaitanya, we see that he's pictured with very long hair. And Prabhupada said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was hippie. And it was just so funny. And then he said, therefore, he has come to save you. But because of Prabhupada's slight Bengali accent, which, the S's are all different shades of SH, right? So we weren't quite sure whether he was saying save you or shave you. And so Prabhupada picked up on that, and he was laughing so much. And he said, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to save you and shave you. He kept repeating it, save you and shave you, save you and shave you. But it was very funny and interesting. But, Prabhupada would really sort of zero into the mentality of the person asking the question. He would answer the same question in many, many different ways, depending on who was asking and what the mood of that person was. One devotee this was in the Boston temple, he really, really wanted the name Madan Mohan. He loved that name. He wanted that name so much. And he was sitting there thinking, I wish I could, it was his initiation. He was sitting there thinking, I wish I could get the name Madan Mohan. He was just sitting there thinking that. And so when it came his time to get his name and get his beads, Prabhupada said, is there any Madan Mohan? and one of the devotees said, yes, Prabhupada, this devotee over here is Madan Mohan. And Prabhupada said, all right, your name is Bharadraj. But just to show that he was reciprocating with the devotee's mood and mood for service. So many stories. I'll pass the mic to Giri or someone. Keep speaking. Okay, so I'll tell a story. This is in the Boston temple. Prabhupada was speaking. This is around the time that Giriraj Swami became a devotee, maybe a little bit before. But Prabhupada was speaking. He was lecturing at different colleges when he was there for that short time. Maybe you were there. I'm not sure if you remember this. But this was also in a small apartment. Actually, I'll tell another story first. So in this small apartment, the devotees always felt, well, Prabhupada will be more comfortable in a nice hotel because we don't really have a proper place for him. So they arranged for a hotel, and Prabhupada came, and he didn't want to stay in a hotel. He wanted to stay with the devotees. So there was someone who was slightly friendly, a student. This was in a student neighborhood near Boston University. And so there was a student who was sort of remotely friendly. We didn't have many friends then. And Satsrupa Maharaj convinced her to move out of her apartment and temporarily move in with a friend so that Prabhupada could stay there for the week that she was there. So we took all her things with her help and sort of rammed them into a closet. And the whole apartment was cleaned out very nicely so Prabhupada could use it. And of course, when Prabhupada came in, he looked right at the closet and said that would be a nice place to place his deities. And so, talk about sensing subtle energy, right? He could sense that mess that was in the closet. And so then all those things were taken out of the closet, and it was clean, and his deities were placed in the closet. And Prabhupada said, it was a rubbish hell, and now it is Vaikuntha. And so in that very apartment, Prabhupada, it seemed to me that he kept stressing, just try to become sincere. Simply try to become sincere, and Krishna will bless you. It seemed like that was all I was hearing everywhere, every time he spoke. So at this opportunity in this little apartment, I said, but Prabhupada, how do we become sincere? And he just looked at me very intensely, and he said, how do you become a thief? And I was very shocked and surprised, and I said, well, by practicing thievery, by associating with thieves, hearing their techniques, hearing how they talk. And he said, yes, so you must practice. It was nice. A nice story. So many little stories from that time. Okay. These are just little, not major big stories, but just little sweet stories. So being on a walk with Srila Prabhupada, walking around that neighborhood, Glenville Avenue, Prabhupada called it Glenville Avenue, Alston neighborhood, Alston Street, and so we were on this walk, and Prabhupada, there was a taxi cab drove up and let someone out of the cab, and the taxi cab driver got out of the cab, and he was sort of a big, fat, rotund sort of a guy, and Prabhupada said, just sort of to us, or just sort of to us, not really to the cab driver, but he said, in India, when we see a fat man, we say, where do you get your merchandise? And then he looked at this taxi cab driver and he said, where do you get your merchandise? In other words, that, you must be eating well. You're so round. And then, we walked a little further, and there were this was kind of the days of the hippie movement. Everyone was alternative lifestyle, and there were some students walking by wearing what they called at the time Buffalo Bill jackets with the kind of fringe hanging down, fringe on the arms and fringe on the front. And Prabhupada said, why do they dress so niggardly? Using this archaic word. Why do they dress so niggardly, in such a shabby way? And Satsrupa Maharaj said, well, it's the style, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, what is that style? Antic style? Is this a comedy or what? So, some little Boston stories.